G'day trendsetters, I'm John with Gravel Cyclist and I'm coming to you today with two insane dogs and a unboxing, features and initial thoughts of a brand new to market bike by my friends at Trek Bicycle of Waterloo, Wisconsin. In fact, this is the very first Trek bicycle I've had the privilege of checking out and reviewing. So I'm really looking forward to this opportunity. What's inside? This is the newest variant of Trek's long-standing Domane model. And I understand it's very handy on the gravelly roads less traveled. All right, this is almost a two-person job, getting this bike out of the box nice and clean. Obviously it's covered in packing material, so let's get that taken care of. And here it is, the all-new Trek Domane. This happens to be a size 54 centimeter, pretty much on the top tube. It does have a rather tall head tube, and you can check out the geometry linked in the description below. The bike is finished off in a rather stealthy matte black paint finish. In fact, the only shiny items would be the SRAM red brake rotors and the Bontrager tubeless ready carbon wheels. Now you might be thinking, hello, this is a road bike. Well, yes, historically it has been designed as an endurance type road bike, but just my initial glancing here tells me, particularly on the rear wheel, I'm thinking this bike is going to be able to squeeze in a pair of 40s, no worries at all. So it looks like Trek is trying to cross over into the world of gravel cycling potentially, making this bike a very well-rounded bicycle. In fact, I predicted this might happen years ago, where we'd see road bikes almost becoming gravel bikes and that be the norm. So who knows, maybe those days have already arrived. One thing that hasn't changed about this bike is the Trek IsoSpeed technology, which is their way of mitigating some of the road vibrations coming up from the road and affecting your derriere. Not so good. So that helps calm things down just a little bit. There's no more seat masts. This is a regular seat post. I believe there are two lengths available. This is the 300. There's also a 250. This size came equipped with a 250. I needed the 300 for the extra length to obviously fit me appropriately. Now, this is a D-shaped seat post, not my favorite thing in life. Usually there's a dodgy clamp system and it often doesn't hold the seat post too well. You have to add carbon paste and so on. But I'm pleased to report that this seat post has not slipped in any manner. You still have the IsoSpeed system as I mentioned earlier, and I'll just remove the seat post so you can see how simple it is. 4mm T-handle Allen key. So the use of a regular seat post, well, that bodes well for travel. You don't have to worry about a mask getting in the way of a case and so on. And there you can see there's some handy little markers on the back side of the seat post. And beneath the rubber gasket here, you've got the IsoSpeed mechanism, and this is the actual wedge that holds the seat post in place, and it's really easy to use. You don't have to fight with the wedge like you often have to with other D-shaped seat posts that I mentioned earlier I find ultra annoying. The lighting's not the best here, but you might be able to see there's plenty of purchase area there for the seat post to be gripped by this clamping mechanism. Well, the head tube is quite tall, but thankfully it looks like it's slammed, because I do freely admit I was concerned about this size. I was almost looking at going a size down, but this might work out. Trek has also included several spaces if you wish to raise the stem, etc. I like how Trek has handled the cable management with the Domane. So rather than running the cable internalized inside the handlebar and then inside a stem, which is ultra annoying, especially if you don't have your fit dialed and you want to make changes, rather they run it inside this custom top cap. So beneath the stem. The system still requires a special top cap and a proprietary stem, but it's a lot more flexible. In fact, I had to change out my stem length for this bike. I substituted from the stock 90 to a 110, and it was a piece of cake. And here's a better look at the cabling run. So just beneath the stem faceplate and right there inside through the custom top cap. Along the down tube is this handy little hatch. It is not a new feature. It is present on the outgoing Domane and a few other bikes in the market you might be aware of. But for those who have not seen it, here's your bottle cage, and there's this little lever here. So if you pull this lever to the right, you might need a thumb or two, unlock it, out pops the bottle cage. Now you think, okay, what's so good about that? Well, inside the frame is this nice little cavity And Bontrager in this case has this nice little Velcro enclosed pouch where you can store tools, tie lever, and an inflator, and also your CO2 cartridges. So let's open them up so you can have a gander inside. Bontrager suggests you install your CO2, your inflator, and your tie levers there. And there are some pretty small tubes available nowadays from companies such as Tubolito. You could probably put 1 or 2 of those inside here and keep them stashed away inside your frame for those emergencies. I could even see putting some emergency food supplies inside this space cavity of the Trek Domane. Really nice feature. And here you go, it's really simple to reinstall. And of course, if you so desire, you can always run a saddle bag if you have to have extra stuff on board your bike. And here's a view of the tyre clearance at the rear end of the bike. The outgoing Domane touts 700C by 38mm. I am confident this bike can take a 40, no worries at all. Let's try and jam the camera a little bit closer. You can see there's a good amount of room there, isn't there? The front is a little bit tighter, as you can see, with the 38, but let's try and stick some bigger tyres in and see how we go. What's next? Let's jam in a wider tyre. So this is another Panorama Gravel King, and this one measures, I think you can see that, so it's about 42mm. Let's start with the front wheel. So that is a 42mm tyre, and there is clearance. Now, is there great mud clearance? No. That's nice. This bike has excelled its predecessor, I like to think. And now the rear wheel. Rear wheel's fitted, and there is clearance. Let's get a closer look. Now it starts getting a bit tight behind the seat tube, but there's still plenty of clearance, really. The clearance, even with the eTap battery, is very good. There is at least 3 to 4mm of clearance between that tyre casing and that eTap battery. And on the drive side stay itself, clearance is about what you have on the non-drive side. Not endorsing this. The 42s do fit, as you can see right here, but 40s, let's just say, are the safest I would consider on the new Trek Domane. And once again, back to endurance road mode. Real quick, covering the component spec, SRAM Red eTap in 2x12. What's not to love about this group set is the flagship model from SRAM. It's bomb-proof, reliable, it looks good. It's also very lightweight. It's not exactly cheap. Now, if you desire to see reviews of a variant of this group set and others from SRAM, be sure to do yourself a favor and check out the links in the description below. The gearing on this bicycle is rather interesting. The SRAM Red 2x crankset, firstly, is fitted with a power meter. That's pretty tasty stuff coming direct from a manufacturer. The other thing is the gearing itself. 46 big chainring, 33 small chainring. So that right there tells me that Trek considers this bike as one that can cross over from the pavement to the gravelly roads less traveled. Now, before anybody freaks out, 46, it sounds like a small gear, but when you pair it with a 10 to 33 cassette as on this bike, not only do you get a nice spread of gears, especially with the 2x, but the 4610, that is a huge gear. In fact, I've knocked out a couple of really fast roadie rides on a 4611. Now granted, I was getting a bit spun out when we got up to low 30 mile an hour, but the 10, that's next level. And 33 being the biggest cog in the back, when you pair that with the front chain rings, the 33 small ring, you get yourself a 1-to-1 gear, which I believe is the bare minimum most people should consider for riding gravel roads. The one thing, don't forget, whilst this bike is currently shod with road tyres, once you fit such a bike with gravel tyres, the width and height of the tyre is changed, and therefore that affects the outer circumference of the wheels, which in turn affects the gearing. So keep that in mind. Also in the box, you've got your SRAM eTap batteries, 2 in all, one for the front derailleur, one for the rear derailleur, SRAM charger. And this is nice, Trek has also included the Bontrager tyre sealant, so I'll be sure to use that with these tyres and, well, at least some other tyres I'll set up. And I mentioned earlier, some spacers and so on. Hey, you can't have the sealant, all right? The sealant is not for chewing or taking off and running away and playing with. Thank you very much. Okay, this is part of the madness I talk about. Now, wherever I've lost my train of thought completely. Now the wheel set is the Bontrager RSL 37. As I alluded to before, it is tubeless, ready to go, and there are 24 spokes front and rear, and obviously it's disc brake compatible. Through axle on the front, 12 by 100mm, and on the rear, 142 by 12mm. And here's another fact that's super interesting about this bike, which again makes me think that Trek wanted you to cross over to the gravel roads from this bicycle. There are mounts on this bike, but they are very well hidden. So you've got your usual mounts for bottle cages you would expect on the down tube and seat tube. And get this, atop the top tube, a super discreet mount for a bento box. A place I used to think was kind of silly, but now I absolutely love. You can throw in food, camera, batteries, all sorts of stuff in there really. And there's also mounts for fenders and so on the fork and on the rear end of the bike. So I really like what Trek have done with this Domane. It's a really nice execution, super clean, and all of the cables are hidden. Obviously with wireless shifting from SRAM, there's no derailleur cables to worry about. But okay, that's enough claptrap. Now it's time to take the all-new Trek Domane for some initial rides. Long-term review coming later. Coming a little later to the channel and website, my review of this fine bicycle. As always, thank you for watching. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing to the Gravel Cyclist YouTube channel for content such as this. No bullshit gravel bike reviews, other product reviews, ride experience videos, and general madness. Okay, boy. Oh, I freaked him out, didn't I? Yeehaw! As all of it is released to the channel. I'll see you in the next video.